Hello and welcome to this video that has been aggressively inspired by a video that I saw on Sarah from the channel Fairy Reads channel. I will link Sarah's channel, gosh that was a lot of the word channel in one go, down in the description bar. She was talking about the last year of Fairy Loot books that she received. I've received books from Fairy Loot YA and Adult and Illumicrate in 2023, so I wanted to run through them, run through what I have read and what I haven't read, and run through my overall thoughts, I think. So I haven't got any of the books physically purely because I'm really lazy and I don't want to have to get them all out and then put them all away again, because that would take me ages. So I'm just going to tell you the names of the books, and that's the way it's going to be. So I will say that there are 29 books that came into my collection from subscriptions in 2023. Of those, I've only read 7, which means I still have 22 of them to read, which is pretty appalling. But I think a big reason for that is that out of those 29 books, only 8 of them were standalones, and most of the standalones I have read, because as you may know if you've watched my recent content, I am trying to only read completed series and read them the whole way through, or you know, at least try to, unless I DNF it. So that's why I haven't really got to many of these, and that does make me slightly not concerned, unsure about whether or not I should continue with these subscriptions, because I just keep adding tons of books to my TBR that I can't actually read because they're incomplete series. So anyway, let's get into it. In January from Fairy Loot YA, we got Spice Road. I haven't read that yet. From the adult box, we got The Last Tale of the Flower Bride, which is a standalone, and I did read it and I did really enjoy it. And then from Illumicrate, we got God Killer, which I originally thought was a duology, and the second book just came out, so I thought I was going to be able to read that basically this month, but actually no, it turns out it's a trilogy. So that one's still on hold, meaning I have not read it. In February, the YA book from Fairy Loot was City of Nightmares. I have read that one. It wasn't standalone, but I actually don't think I'm going to continue with the series, and I enjoyed it. The adult Fairy Loot book was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi, which I haven't read, and is the first book in the series. And then from Illumicrate, it was Song of Silver, Flame Like Night, which I have read. I don't know if I'm going to read the second book. It's a duology, so it's the final book, because I wasn't in love with Song of Silver. I really hope, I was expecting to like it more than I did, but I think it was just too fast paced for me. And as you may know, I am in my slow books era, so that one didn't really work for me, and I'm not 100% sure on whether or not to read the second one, even though I did order it because it's very, very pretty. In March, I will go ahead and say straight off, I haven't read any of the sub-box books from March. From the YA Fairy Loot, it was Seven Faceless Saints. From the adult Fairy Loot, it was Foxglove King. And from Illumicrate, it was Lies We Sing to the Sea. And that last one is the only one that is a standalone, but I haven't read it yet. Actually, I probably should have skipped that one because it's not really totally my vibe, but I will still give it a go. In April, Fairy Loot YA was Silver in the Bone. Haven't read that. From the adult box, it was In the Lives of Puppets, which I have read and I did enjoy, and it was a standalone. And then from Illumicrate, it was Some Desperate Glory, which I haven't read, but it was a standalone, or it is a standalone, but it is also sci-fi. So I have to be in a really particular mood for a sci-fi, you know? And then in May, In the Fairy Loot YA box it was Divine Rivals, which I have read, and I have actually also read the sequel slash final book in that duology as well. I really enjoyed both of them. The Fairy Loot adult book was Curse of Saints, but I actually skipped it because I didn't have any interest in that book, so I haven't read it, but it's also not on my physical TBR, which is nice. And then from Illumicrate it was Witch King, which is a standalone, but I haven't read. I did try to read it, I started it, and it just wasn't what I was in the mood for at the moment that I picked it up, so I put it back down. It was a soft DNF though. I do plan to try again in future. In June, the YA Fairy Loot book was Sing Me to Sleep, and I skipped that one because it was like a seafaring book, which is just not my thing, so I skipped it. So I haven't read it, but it's not on my shelves. The adult one was Shanghai Immortal, which I did actually, same thing as with Witch King, I did try it at one point, but I just wasn't in the mood for it, so I decided to put it back down again. But it actually isn't a standalone, which I thought it was at the time, so I haven't read that one. And I also haven't read the Illumicrate book, which was The Sun and the Void, which is also the first book in a series. The July Fairy Loot YA book was Threads That Bind, which I haven't read, and the adult was Immortal Longings, which I haven't read. Both of those are first books in series. The Illumicrate book was The Hazard Heir, and I haven't read that, but I did skip it because it didn't sound like my kind of jam, so it's not on my shelves. Then in August, the Fairy Loot YA was Bonesmith. Haven't read it. Adult was Forged by Blood, haven't read it. And Illumicrate was Zara, haven't read it. So I haven't read any of those, but they are also all first books in series. September, I skipped the Fairy Loot YA book, which was If I Have to Be Haunted, and I haven't read the adult book, which was Son of Blood and Ruin, which is the first book in a series. The Illumicrate book was A Study in Drowning, which is a standalone, and I have read it and I did enjoy it. In October, the Fairy Loot YA book was The Forest Grimm. Actually, I know I just said in September I skipped it. I didn't skip it. This is the point where I had cancelled my Fairy Loot YA. So I'll still tell you what the YA books were, just in case you want to know, but I have actually skipped all of the Fairy Loot YAs from now on because I cancelled my subscription. So anyway, it was The Forest Grimm. Didn't receive it. The adult one was The Hurricane Wars, which is the first book in a series, and I have not read it. And the Illumicrate book was After the Forest, which is a standalone, but I haven't read it yet. I've been waiting for the audiobook to come in from the library, and when it comes in I will be reading it. I'm looking forward to reading that one. I just haven't got the audio through yet. Then in November, the YA Fairy Loot was The Scarlet Alchemist, which again I didn't receive that. The Fairy Loot adult was Swordcatcher, haven't read it. Is the first book in a series. And then the Illumicrate book was Starling House, which is a standalone, and I did read it and I did enjoy it. And then in December, the YA Fairy Loot that I didn't get was What the River Knows. The adult book that I did receive is Feybound, which again is the first book in a series, and therefore I have not read it. And the Illumicrate one was A Principle of Moments, which I have not read. But again, it's the first in a series, and it's the first in a sci-fi series, so that one I did not read either. So my stats here are pretty shocking, and I think I need to get better about skipping things that I'm not interested in. But I do feel like the subscription boxes, they need to be including more standalone books, which I know is hard because it's fantasy, and fantasy is built on series. But the problem is, right, is that I end up with all of these first books in series in hardback, none of which I want to read because I have no idea when the series are going to be finished. Most of them I don't even know how long the series are going to be. And then I'm in this conundrum, like, do I continue collecting these books? Do I buy the hardback so I have matching copies, or not, because I haven't tried them? So most of the time I err on the side of not, because I don't want to accumulate all of these expensive hardbacks of books that I don't even know if I'm going to like I did get the sequel to Song of Silver Flame Like Night because the edges were stunning and it was from a book collector perspective rather than a reader perspective. I got the sequel to God Killer because from what I've heard about it, I'm fairly confident that I'll like it. And Divine Rivals, I think I ordered Ruthless Vows. It hasn't arrived yet, but I'm glad I did because I liked Divine Rivals better than Ruthless Vows, but I liked the duology. So I don't really know that there's much point to me in doing this version of this video, because I don't necessarily have any particular takeaways, but when I look at the cold hard facts like this, it does make me question whether or not I should really be continuing to collect these books. I'm really not sure. But then they release some really stunning special editions that I wouldn't have access to without my subscription, because most of the time they sell out on pre-sale. So I don't know, and I should really think about that. And also I should probably really start thinking about selling some of the ones that I have read that I haven't loved. Anyway, this was kind of just a video for me to kind of chat with you, I suppose. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.